All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday morning, June the 1st, 2021. And hope you're having a beautiful morning. I can't believe it's already June the 1st. And when Antonio mentioned that today, I realized today it's been 28 years since I graduated high school. I can't even believe that. I'm talking in those kinds of numbers. Insanity. Anyway, so good morning to everybody. Good morning to my mom. Love you, Mama. Hope you're doing well this morning. Good morning to Wendy and to John and Emma and Sutton. Good morning to you. And good morning to John and Jan as you guys are traveling in New Mexico. And so enjoy that beautiful scenery. Makes me hanker for a road trip. And yes, I said hanker. There was a commercial when I was a kid on Saturday mornings. Hank for a hunk of cheese. Okay, anyway. Good morning to the Eddies, to Lauren and Levi and Valor and Haven and Everett. Good morning to you guys. And to Pat and Lori and let me back up here. It just slid down on me here. And to Jerry and Janet. Good morning, you guys. And Jim and Sarah and Nicole and Ron and Amy and Sonia and Naum and Sarah. Love you all. Good morning to Kelly Kenfield, and good morning to Kelly and Melody Woods, and good morning to Elizabeth and Jesse and Philip and Salome, and let's see, and Pastor and Sister Martinez. Good morning to you guys, and let's see here, I think, and Jessica. Good morning, Jessica. It was good to see you yesterday on Overflow. It was great to all be. There were a bunch of us on Overflow yesterday. That was a lot of fun. I think 10, 12 of us at some points. Is Dayspring on? Good morning to Dayspring. I hadn't seen your name yet, but if you're on, or good evening to Dayspring. So anyway, that was a lot of fun, and hope if you're able to join us on Friday for Overflow, that'd be great. Just download Zoom on your device, and you just click on the link and that we put in there, and it's pretty easy. You download Zoom on your phone or your computer, and if you're a little intimidated by it, don't be. It's really simple to use. All right, well, hey, this morning we are in Zechariah 12, and I had considered going through the entire chapter. I wasn't able to, I'm not able to, and most of the commentaries had divided it anyway, so that was nice to divide it into verses 1 through 9 and then verses 10 through 14. So we'll do verses 1 through 9 today, and so as we come to Zechariah 12 now, we hit these final 3 chapters of the book of 12, 13, and 14, and it's this new section. It's a final section, and it's really there's a lot of in that day over these next 3 chapters. I think 17 times in that day, which is pointing to, of course, this day that is yet to come. And I don't like using big theological terms, but one of the words that, if you're not familiar with, is eschatology, eschatological. It's from the Greek word eschatos, which is the last things, final things. And so it's pointing that's really what when we say it's eschatological, it's what we think in terms of that end times theology, end times, that which is yet to come. We really see that in chapters 12 through 14. Coming through, so chapter 12 opens up with the burden of the word of the Lord, Maser Daver Adonai, which is exactly what chapter 9 opened up with. So 9 through 11 was this section, after we came out of 1 through 8 with all the visions and so forth. 9 through 11 is a section that begins with, this is the burden of Adonai, this is the word of the Lord. And you'll remember it was like, okay, this what's being carried, the word of the Lord is coming, and you begin to see, in chapter 9, the Lord overthrowing the nations that are surrounding Judah, and as he gets closer and closer to them, that then even what you have is the remaining of those that were their closest enemies, those who who come through this judgment period, that those who are remaining will be like a tribe of Judah, to the Lord. So there's this welcoming in of the nations of those who were our enemies, that we see in 9. And so you have this vision in 9, and of, again, you'd think, because of previously in the first 8 chapters of Zechariah, that maybe he's coming in on a horse, and then it says, behold your king in verse 9. Behold, your king is coming to you, a righteous one bringing salvation. He is lowly, he's humble, afflicted, riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So he's not galloping in. He's bringing peace. And so you have that in chapter 9, and then chapter 10 was this theme about this restoration that he's bringing, this flourishing that the Lord is bringing. And yet this warning to not go back to where you were, to not trust in ask the Lord for the rain. Don't go to these false gods for rain, and then it turns on the false shepherds who had led the people previously in that way, and apparently would do so again. And so we saw yesterday in chapter 11, the Lord called Zechariah to now act out the role of the good shepherd. And has to take him the 2 staffs, and one favor and one is union, and the Lord basically says, the sheep have followed the foolish shepherd. They've in large part rejected the good shepherd, although the good shepherd has kept the afflicted to himself. So he's going to be bringing judgment, but he's held the afflicted to himself. And as he breaks the staff of favor and he breaks the staff of union, it says that the afflicted, the lowly, the humble saw that this, understood that this, they recognized this was the word of the Lord. This was what the Lord was doing. And chapter 11 ends with, again, this rebuke of the false shepherd. And the Lord basically says, okay, to his people who are rejecting him as the good shepherd, says, you want to be out? You want to buy out of the covenant? You want to buy your way out? Fine. If you want to pay your part, and pay your part, or don't, whatever. Forget it. And it says they paid him 30 pieces of silver, which is the price of a slave to buy their freedom, as though all that he had given them, it's a paltry sum. So it says Zechariah was told to take it, and he threw it into the potter's house at the temple where it would be. And so that, of course, we see that come to fulfillment. So the people basically said, we want out. And the Lord gives them what they wanted. And he says, okay, I'll raise up for you a shepherd. It ends who won't attend. I'll give you what you want, just like when they wanted a king in 1 Samuel chapter 8. And the Lord says, tell them what they're getting. They're going to be paying taxes. Their kids are going to be going to war. They're going to be serving they're going to be serving whoever that king is. They're going to be serving his tribe. They're going to be giving up what the inheritance I've given them for him, rather than having me as their king. They've rejected me as king. And so, but that's what they want. Give it to them. And the ultimate consequence was ending up in exile. So now he says, okay, I'll give them what they want. A shepherd who won't attend to the dying, a shepherd who won't seek out the young, basically the vulnerable, a shepherd who won't heal the broken and shattered, a shepherd who won't carry the exhausted, the shepherd that they're going to have, the shepherd that they want. This is what you want. The shepherd you want is the foolish shepherd, is the destructive shepherd, is the one who will consume you. He'll get everything out of you that he can, basically eating the sheep, destroying them, even using their hooves, just greedily draining them of everything. And you can really see in that the contrast with how the enemy works and how he wants to just offers. Everyone says, I want to be free of you, God, because I want to do what I want to do. And without recognizing who the Lord is, and And what you see is that the very thing that you're pursuing, the very thing that you want, is only after itself, and it will destroy you and consume you. And if the book of Zechariah had concluded at the end of chapter 11, the future for Judah would be in question. You'd say, well, boy, that's not good. What's that all about? I mean, it's pretty bleak. There would be questions about what's happening, but in rejecting the good shepherd, and favor and kindness are shattered, and he says, and the covenant has been, the breaking of the union, and it says, I broke the favor, to say the covenant is broken, and has God's patience. He said he had his patience had cut short. Has his patience reached its end, resulting in sort of is what's going on for Abraham's seed? Or was there hope? Is there still hope? And so the next 3 chapters still bring that hope. It answers the questions. Is there hope for the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? So these final 3 chapters, you turn from this dismal past and even what's coming to a triumphant future, that in that day. And in that day that's coming, what's about to be described is a level of, what's about to be described in chapter 12 at first is a level of animosity and fighting against Judah, and in particular Jerusalem, an attack toward God's people that was comprehensive in nature, it was universal. That's what's about to be described. All the nations coming against Jerusalem, all the nations coming against God's people, beyond anything that anyone had yet seen or could have imagined. A lot of times you see it's not in the present, but throughout history, where Jerusalem and Judah were simply they're just in the way. When the Greeks were fighting over the land during the Maccabean time with Antioch, prior to that, where it had been divided, they were just basically like a border between kingdoms. So it's like fighting over a border. No one was really after them. They were just kind of in the way. But there's coming this time when all the nations will be besieging Jerusalem. And so that's going to be talked about here. But before this word is given, the first portion of the burden of Adonai, this word now that's being carried up, ma'asah, being lifted up, masah, that says the Lord wants to remind his people now who is giving the word. Verse 1, the burden of the word of Adonai concerning Israel. So again, masah daver Adonai, toward Israel. A declaration of Adonai, who stretched out the heavens, laid the foundations of the earth, and formed the spirit of man within him. So as the Lord is to declare his word, he wants to remind us to note with clarity who it is that's speaking, whose word this is. The one who is speaking is the one who stretched out the heavens, right? So that first note shemayim, he stretched out the heavens. It's even the metaphor of stretching out your tent is kind of the picture, but he did that with the heavens. Isaiah had spoken of the Lord's creative activity with the same image. He stretches out the heavens like a canopy. He spreads them out like a tent to live in Isaiah 40 and 42. And then it says who laid the foundations, laying the foundations of the earth. So this next idiom, employs, it's kind of a different, he stretches out the tent, he stretches out the heavens, the canopy, but he lays the foundations for a mighty edifice, he's a master builder. So together with stretching out the heavens, laying the foundations of the earth, he is the one who has created all that you see, all that you stand on. And he's created you, is the following, who breathed Ruach, who formed Ruach, Yotzer, and V'yotzer, he's the shaper, the potter, the former of Ruach, of breath, of spirit. the spirit of humanity, of Adam, of man, in his with Bikirbo is within his body, basically, in the midst of this container. So you've got him over everything, and yet there's a much more personal aspect to who he is, who having crafted, having formed the spirit of man within him. And so what he's about to describe is you're going to feel outnumbered, you're going to feel surrounded, you're going to be facing an absurdly bad situation. But the one who stretched out the heavens, the creator who stretched out, is the one who's now speaking about what's going to come. His power is incomparable. If he can create the masterfully large universe, and he can form the spirit of man within him, which is intimately personal, then he's big enough to handle what seems overwhelming and impossible, and to see you in the midst of it, to see his people, to keep his eyes open toward his people, that he can and he will indeed fulfill his promises to his people, that God's final word is not judgment but restoration. And we come to that here in Zechariah 12. So having reminded them who he is, the one who stretched out the heavens, the one who laid the foundations of the earth, the one who formed the spirit of man within him, says, behold. He says, Hine Anoki, behold, I, the one who did all these things, here's what I'm going to do. I will make, or I will appoint, establish, I will set Jerusalem as a cup of reeling to all the surrounding peoples when they besiege Jerusalem as well as Judah. And so, Jerusalem's been mentioned throughout the book of Zechariah on occasion, but now Jerusalem becomes central over these next three chapters. In verses 2 through 11, we're just going through verse 9 today, but Jerusalem is mentioned 11 times, just over and over, Jerusalem at the center. He says, I will set up, establish Jerusalem as a goblet of staggering. And it's kind of an unusual phrase, because the word used for staggering here is only used here. This particular word is only used here in the Hebrew Bible. So in the word for goblet, saf, is for vessels in the temple. So it's this goblet which causes staggering. Now, we've seen other images, similar images though, which pertain to God's judgment, of reeling, of staggering, when his judgment is like he's going to make the nations drink the cup. We saw in Jeremiah, and he was going to make Judah drink the cup of his judgment. But Jerusalem now, he will establish Jerusalem as a goblet of staggering. And so the ones who are drinking from this cup are those surrounding Judah, the people surrounding and besieging Jerusalem and Judah. So then we go on, verse 3. It says, and in that day, moreover in that day, but it's a vahaya, and it will be. Vahaya means, and it will be, it will become, it will happen. Bayom hahu, and it will happen in that day. I will, and same language here, asim et Yerushalayim, I will set up, I will establish, I will appoint Jerusalem as a massive stone. It's a burdensome stone. It's the language masa. It's the burden is the opening, a burden of the word of the Lord. Here it's used in a form that is again unusual. It's used in its feminine context. He's going to set up Jerusalem as a stone, which is a heavy stone or a burdensome stone for all the people. So it's all the people, and it's referring back to all those surrounding. And it says here, all who try to lift, all who try to burden up this burden. It's the stone. This stone is going to be a burdensome stone. And anyone who tries to lift up, to move Jerusalem, who tries to control Jerusalem, who tries to lift up this burdensome stone, says will be cut to pieces. Nevertheless, all the nations of the earth will be gathered together against her. And so the gathering together is the word for like harvesting. And so but they're gathered together in unity to try to harvest it together, but to try to against Jerusalem. So again, this phrase, stone of burden, is unusual. Now, we've had a stone mentioned multiple times through Zechariah, right? I mean, you've got the metaphor, the engraved stone, but that's put before Joshua, the priest, in 3:9. You have the basically the premier stone, the headstone of the temple in Zerubbabel, the tin stone in 4:7. You have the tin stone in 4:10. These are all positive. You have the lead stone that is, remember, in the vision of the ephah, that is put back on the ephah to keep sin and wickedness within it, in 5:8. And then you have the gemstones of the crown that are going to sparkle in 9:16. So Jerusalem now is this stone that will be a massive stone. And it says all who try to burden up the burden of this stone will be cut to pieces. And the word for cut here, sarot, is it's used twice. So it says sarot yisaretu. So it's sarot suro. It's cut up. So it intensifies the action. Anytime you have a doubling of the word, it intensifies the action. But what does that mean? What is the language here? The same word is used in Leviticus 21, Leviticus 21:5, when the Lord says that you're not to make any cuttings or incisions in the flesh. And you have languages that are related to Hebrew, what are called cognate languages, where they're related and they have the same sort of foundational beginning, etymology, where they started from the same root. And so in the language of the Akkadian language, the same word saratu points to battle wounds, battle cuts. And so the picture is that anybody, Jerusalem is a heavy stone. Carrying it is going to result in severe wounds. And so basically, all who try to make it their own are going to find it too heavy a load. And rather than you being able to move it, to control it, it's going to inflict damage on the one who tries to do that. They cannot control it. It is the Lord's. It is too heavy for anyone to try to move. They cannot move the purposes of God. Verse 4. Again, bayom, bayom hahu, in that day, declares Adonai. He says, I will strike every horse with confusion and with bewilderment, and its rider in madness, with madness. I will keep my eyes on the house of Judah. Or literally it says, and toward the house of Judah I will open my eyes, and every horse of the peoples I will smite in blindness. It says, but will blind every horse of the people. So anytime you see horse and rider, there's the picture of this military scene. And of course, we have all the nations gathered together, surrounding Jerusalem, besieging the city, trying to pick it up and move it, trying to bring it, to destroy it. And the Lord says, basically, my eyes are open toward the house of Judah. And everything that these people are trying to use to carry them in, the horse that they're riding on, it's going to be in confusion, because it won't be able to see what it's doing. There'll be blindness, there'll be confusion, there'll be madness, just insanity, and in the desire to bring down God's people and God's purposes. Verse 5. Then the leaders of Judah will say in their heart. So now we get to hear the internal thinkings of what the Jewish leaders here are saying. And they're saying, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength through Adonai Tzavaot, their God. So now we, anytime it says in their heart, it's talking about our internal thoughts. So the leaders are saying something in their hearts. And typically in the past, when what the Lord is usually dealing with when they say in their heart, a lot of times what you're dealing with is a lot of self-reliance, is people giving lip service but saying something in their hearts. And so how are the leaders going to understand what's happening? All the nations are surrounding. And I mean, so on paper we're outnumbered. On paper, with common sense, there's no point, there's no possibility of victory here. And yet, anyone that tries to move us is destroyed, is shattered, is cut to pieces. And there's just madness out there. In the past, the leaders might say, well, look at where we've put our strength, or may say, boy, well, how lucky are we? Look at our people are the best fighters or the strongest or whatever it might be. Or may want to place the credit where it doesn't belong. But here, the leaders are going to say, these people are my strength, but there's only one way they're my strength. Through Adonai Tzevaot Elohehem, through Adonai, the Lord of hosts, their God. That's the only way they're my strength. As this supernatural thing is happening, all the nations against us. These people are all my strength, but the only way they're my strength is through the Lord, their God. So there's this stark contrast to what the false shepherds of the past have done. See, the leaders will be the shepherds. The leaders will be the shepherds, and so the false shepherds kept looking to make alliances with others. When they were surrounded, would look to draw from others to make alliances with the surrounding nations. But here there is no alliance. The only alliance is that the eyes of the Lord are open toward Judah, toward Jerusalem. And the people recognize, well, my people are my strength through Adonai, their God. Verse 6. Bayom hahu, in that day, again, I will make the leaders of Judah, I will appoint, I will set up. So now as he set up Jerusalem, he's setting up these leaders of Judah. I will set up the leaders at Alphai Yehuda like a fire pot in a wood pile. It's like a pot. It's a cauldron, a bowl of fire, in plural, in the word for wood, but plural. And then like a burning torch among sheaves. They will devour on the right and on the left all the surrounding peoples, yet Jerusalem will remain in her place in Jerusalem. So the result is this, as they say, look, my strength is my people through the Lord our God, their God. That's where our strength is, through the Lord our God. And the result is basically that now these leaders recognizing where their strength is in the Lord, that now they are surrounded. But relative to what they're surrounded by, in our vernacular, we'd say, man, they're on fire. Because that's the picture here, right? They're like surrounded by a forest of trees, by woods, but they're like a pot of fire that would start a forest fire that would consume the wood. The second object is torches. A torch is on fire. It's the same word used to describe what Gideon's men held in their hand in Judges chapter 7. But they're going to be like torches of fire among the sheaves, the freshly fallen grain that's cut by the reaper. It's lying in the field all around them, right? And so they're gathered together. The word for gathering together, they're gathered together, also would carry with it that idea of sheaves. But now in the midst of the sheaves, they're like a fire, and with the sheaves around them ready to be threshed. And the significance of what's being painted here is clear. It says that they are depicted as consuming all the surrounding armies on their right and their left, everything around them. That they're like a fire in the midst. No matter what the difference is, sheaves. If you're sheaves and one is a torch of fire or a boiling pot of fire in the midst of wood, the power is where the fire is. The victory is where the fire is. Those surrounding armies that are besieging Jerusalem are in trouble, and they're depicted sort of as passive objects, right? I mean that initially they're surrounding and they're coming, and Jerusalem is depicted as a passive object, right? Like it's a goblet of staggering. It's a stone that they can't lift. They come against it. These surrounding people come against it, but they're incapacitated by the effect of the object. And then now the leaders of Judah are depicted in an active role. They're consuming the armies. And the significance is clear. The fact that the inhabitants of Jerusalem remain in their place, right? And those in Jerusalem are steady. The inhabitants of Jerusalem are in their place in Jerusalem. It emphasizes that the leaders of Judah will be the ones who will accomplish the great feat by the Lord. And there will be stability. They're not going to lose the city into the hands of these foreign armies. Verse 7, and he will save Adonai, Vahoshia Adonai. Adonai will also save, and Adonai will save, rescue, deliver the tents of Judah first, or chiefly uses the word rosh for like the head, so that the honor of the house of David and the honor of the inhabitants of Jerusalem will not exceed that of Judah. So in order that, it says, in order that they not magnify the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem above Judah. So that's, initially you say, well, that's a little bit confusing. What's going on here? What's going on to say we're not wanting to magnify or glorify the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem above Judah as a whole? What's being depicted here? Well, the picture here is, remember, as the king comes in Zechariah 9, as he comes in lowly. Your salvation comes, your king comes in righteousness and salvation. The words for righteousness and mishpat and for justice and tzedakah, righteousness, have to do with an equity, a restoration of the way that things were always intended to be. Prior to the people saying, "Give us a king," all the 12 tribes, everyone was on equal footing. There was no desire to want to be part of one tribe over another. You had your inheritance, and everyone was on equal footing, and God was going to accomplish his purposes. But the Lord said, look, when you want a king, here's what's going to happen. You're going to be giving up things of your inheritance. That like this tribe is going to be exalted and ultimately becomes the Davidic monarchy. And so prior to the exile, you want to be of Jerusalem. You want to be of the house of David. That's where you want to be. And so what you have a picture here is that the Lord's going to save the tents of Judah first, of all of Judah. There's an equality here. So what do we do, though, with that? Because you say, well, but the house of David is still through whom the Messiah will come. It's an exalting of everyone, and yet it doesn't remove, it's the people, the condition of the people will be restored to that which was supposed to be. But there's a picture that we get, if there's any confusion about, well, what happens to the house of David? We're talking about Messiah. We're talking about the king riding in on a donkey. What do we see? We see in the next verse. It says, in that day, Bayom Hahu, in that day, Adonai will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, or he will enclose, is the language. He will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And so here's what happened. Check this. It says, so that the weakest among them, and the picture for the weakest is the stumbling. It's language that's often used. The word kasal is often used to the poorest soldier in a military context, the soldier who's the weakest, who's stumbling over himself in a battle, in contrast to the mighty warriors. Here it says that the weakest among them, the stumbling, the feeble among them that day, will be like David. And the house of David will be like God. The house of David, ke Elohim, the kaf at the beginning of a word is means like or as. It's a comparison. So the weakest will be like David. And David will be ka Elohim, like God. And then it even furthers that comparison, ka malach Adonai, before them, before their face, like the angel of the Lord, the messenger of the Lord before them. So this king, David, not David, who's gone, but David, the house of David, the one, your king coming on a donkey, will be Ke Elohim, like God, like the angel of Adonai before him. Many Jewish translators early on really struggled with this language. They didn't like the comparison. They didn't know what to do with Ke Elohim, so that the Targums, the Aramaic translations of the Hebrew Bible of Zechariah depicted, rendered the phrase to say the house of David will be, they took the word Elohim, will be to say like great ones, will be like princes, and will flourish like kings. And then one translation was the house of David will be like a divine house, like the angel of Adonai. I mean, you can say David will be like Elohim. You can make the argument will be like, because the word Elohim can mean great ones, mighty ones. It can. But lest there's any confusion, the follow-up is like the angel of the Lord, the angel of Adonai before them. So there's something, David is compared to God, so everyone will be exalted to be like kings, right? The weakest among them will be like David, will be like the house of David. You'll be of a royal line. You will be sons and daughters of a royal line, the weakest among you. And your king will be like God, like the messenger of Adonai before them. When in God's protecting, this is the Lord will defend them in this way. He will defend them in this way so that the weakest will be like the house of David, like the sons and daughters of the king. And the king himself will be like God, like the angel of the Lord. There's something that is being pointed to, obviously, pointing to, we understand Messiah Yeshua, pointed to the King of all kings, who comes, that he is going before them on that day. You know, you would see throughout the scriptures, the angel of the Lord would go before them in battle. The angel of the Lord, whenever they would go, when they went through the Red Sea, the angel of the Lord would go before them. When they went into the land, the angel of the Lord went before them. And so now this king going before them, one like God, one like the angel, as the angel of Adonai, is not simply metaphoric language, but it's pointing to something that is very different, again, than what they would have been accustomed to. And like I said, the translators struggled with this comparison to God, weren't really comfortable with it. But it's there. And then verse 9, our closing verse today, says, and it will happen. Again, v'haya bayom hahu. And it will happen, it will be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. So now the Lord will, that he says that he will now, all those who are coming against his purposes, now he will bring destruction upon them. So with that will lay the foundation for verse 10, which is an incredible verse, which we can't get into today. We'll get into that tomorrow. So what do you do when judgment is due the nations that are coming at you? What do you do? And it's going to be cool to see what we see tomorrow in verse 10. All right, so let's pause for today, and we'll continue chapter 11 tomorrow. And let me say hello to everybody else that I may have missed. Okay. All right. All right. Good morning. Good morning again. Good morning to Elizabeth and Jesse and Salome and Philip. And good morning to Erica. And I think that's everybody. All right. I think that's all of us. Did I miss anybody? If I missed you, I'm sorry. Say hello, and we'll pop in. But anyway, it's pretty cool the way the Lord is our defender, that he exalts us. The weakest among us become like sons and daughters of the King. Right? Behold what love the Father has lavished upon us, that we should be called sons and daughters, children of God, that we are his children. And the one whom we follow is the Lord of hosts, Messiah Yeshua, King of kings, Lord of lords. He is our defender. Amen? All right. Well, John and Jan, be safe on the road. And everyone enjoy June 1st. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.